I'm a huge fan of 3D printing. I will always have a 3D printer by my side. So the first printer I purchased, it was a kind of like an industrialized wrap that I purchased in 2013, I guess. It was at the end of my college degree that I did in industrial design. And 3D printing was just starting in Brazil, especially like manufacturing 3D printers. A lot of people, they used to create their own 3D printers, make it themselves, the DIY kits. They were big back in the days. So what I purchased was actually a wrap that was done by a company, but it had all the bad characteristics of the early days in 3D printing. The printer was really hard to assemble. It was really hard to make it work. It was hard to get the configurations right. It was hard to get the proper filament to make it work. So everything was very early days when I first purchased my 3D printer. And then 3D printing always kept with me because I really liked the hobby, I really liked the benefits, I really liked what it could provide me. So I was always 3D printing somehow. But then I finished graduation, I started to working in the marketplace, and then I went to work on an industry. And then inside the industry, your liberty of creativity is much more limited, is much more strict than it is when you're just creating stuff by your own. And then I kind of felt that I wanted to create more. I wanted to create my own stuff without the briefing of an industry, without having to do something that you're demanded to do. I needed to express myself somehow creatively. And then I started to 3D print my own objects, to design my own stuff and 3D print them. And I was printing those really cool small vases for succulents and cactus. And then I decided to post one day on my Instagram. This is what I did. I've modeled it, I've printed it. And then I've started to, this was obviously a little bit of a test for me to see whether people would enjoy the design or not. But I started to get some really cool feedbacks of people wanting to purchase those vases that I designed. And I decided to start selling them. So I started selling through my own personal Instagram. And then after I got a few orders, I thought with myself, okay, so perhaps I should just go in and put that on a marketplace and start selling those for more people. And this is how Kazazi, my previous business, started. I started with my own designs. It started much more as an experiment than as an actual business idea or a business model that was very formed and conceived in my head. And luckily enough, people enjoyed the products. I got some good reviews. I was starting to gain some traction within those marketplaces. And then I decided, well, perhaps then I should try to make this as my main activity. Perhaps I should create here a path where I can quit my job and be 3D printing my whole time. Okay, so then once I was full-time working with Kazazi and I was no longer with the job, I understood that my next goal should be to create more products, to have a bigger portfolio that I could rely on and do more sales. And with that in hand, I kind of went to understand the market a little bit, because I think when I first started Kazazi, it was more about having a 3D printer and doing cool stuff with it than actually having a business. But then once I went into that way of doing home decor products, and since I was an industrial designer and I kind of had this training in graduation, I understood that I need to focus and look at my audience to understand what they wanted from me. And this is when we started to launch several different products and try them out. A lot of those products didn't work. Some of those products work. But then one of the products that we created in this period was the Bob vases. And the Bob vases is kind of like a cool story, because there was this digital influencer, this cool Instagram here from Brazil, that she traveled to Mexico, and then she saw those cute little vases. There was basically like a human figure with a vase in its head, and she sent it to me and said, oh, these vases are really cool, what do you think about them? And they had like this sort of handmade aesthetic, like this clay aesthetic, this very strong clay aesthetic of something that was kind of like hand sculpted a little bit. And together with that, at this period, there's this design brand called Umbra, that they have these really cool hangers that are sticky figures of some sort. They are kind of like climbing on the walls. And they are very geometric representations of the human figure. And then I thought that if I could blend these two products together, I would create a third one that was unique, and it would have the appeal of a contemporary aesthetic but it would also have the feeling that that handmade product evoked on that person that presented the product to me. So this is what I did. I kind of blended the two products together, and I've created a full line of sticky figures with a vase in the head, human figures with the vase in the head, and they got really popular. Right at the start, right at the launch, we knew that we had a different product in our hands, a product with a lot of potential in our hands. And that product by itself drove a lot of our sales for a very long time. Obviously, afterwards, we created a collection that was much broader than just those initial 4 models that I did. Actually, initially I did 2 models. And then there was a follow-up collection that was another 2 models, and then the collection just kept on growing and going further. As we were growing, one of the things that we understood that was working and we kept on going and doing that was talking with the digital influencers. And then eventually we migrated the digital influencers to architects. So we decided to talk and expose our products to as many architects as we could, because most of the times the architect, he designs an interior space and he also specifies the items that the customer should buy. So we understood that, so we decided to start talking with a lot of architects, understood what they think about our products. And one of the architects that we talked, she was also designing the scenarios of some really big TV shows here in Brazil, for the biggest TV broadcast here in Brazil as well. And we sent a few vases to her so she could put on The Voice, the Brazilian version of The Voice, which was pretty big back in the day. And it didn't work out at the end of the day. They didn't like the final product. They were not interested in moving it forward. But then a few months after, we saw that they did a big purchase on the Bob vases from Kazazi. And then a few months later, we were looking at the big review of the Big Brother Brazil house. Big Brother, the reality TV show here in Brazil, is really big. And they do this event where they reveal the house where the participants are going to be for the next 3 months. And then at the review of the show, we looked at the outside area and it was full of our vases, but like honestly full of our vases. It had over 20 vases from all different types and styles that we had on our website. And this was really cool. And it helped us so much to sell more. We were really well positioned online already. We were doing some really interesting ads. The ads were already performing really well. And then the Big Brother Brazil started, and it boosted our sales a lot. And then right after, the pandemic broke out. And while the pandemic broke out, the Big Brother Brazil TV show got even bigger, because it was really interesting to see people that they were inside a house and they had no idea that the world was just falling apart outside the house. So people got really interested in the TV show, and that pushed us even further, pushed the sales of those items even further. And that was a moment where Kazazi really completely changed the level. I remember during the pandemic, I was like almost daily trying to figure out what I was going to do to import more printers. At the time I was using Creality CR10s, and they were not on sale in Brazil. Like I had to import them in order to be able to put them in our 3D printing factory, so at our 3D printing farm. So I was dealing with Creality, trying to figure out how to bring them to Brazil. We were having to grow the factory as the whole pandemic was happening. And it was a real challenge. It was really hard to make that happen. We were delivering, I guess, like 20 days after the purchase. We were doing the shipping of the items, which was really bad. It's weird, because when we think about the level of the 3D printers that we have these days, where they print at almost 500 millimeters a second, a CR10 could print at 30 millimeters a second. So we were really slow at manufacturing everything. And we had to manufacture a lot. So that was a real struggle, real issue that we needed to face in order to be able to just fill the demand that we had, just fulfill the orders we had. A few things made the demand not to be there anymore after the TV show ended. The first thing, and I guess the most important thing, was that when people saw what we were doing, we started to have a lot of copies of our products. So people were copying the products almost as fast as we were launching new products. They copied the entire Bob vase collection, and they distributed the STLs to everybody. They copied pretty much every product that we launched ever since. They were copied instantaneously. So we would launch something, and then within the next week, it would be already selling by someone somewhere, which was really bad. So at the beginning, I really underestimated the issue because I thought this was not going to be a problem for us. But after a while, I realized that this was a big problem because I was seeing a lot of people selling my products much cheaper than we were, at a price that we could not match. And after a while, that drove the sales away. So as we were struggling, trying to deal with the copies, trying to deal with the competition, I realized that it was bigger than just a competition, but it was actually a movement of people going after things to print at their own houses. And if this was happening in Brazil, most likely it was happening everywhere around the world. And this is where I understood that perhaps my role within the 3D printing community was more to create the models for people to explore than to be myself printing and selling the items. So this is where the idea of STLFLIX, kind of the first idea, the initial idea of STLFLIX was first born. I realized that if people were paying 3D artists to copy my models, perhaps I could be the person providing those models, and more than that, I could be the person providing good models with the photos, with the videos and everything to help those people be as successful as I was once selling 3D printed models. So this is where the initial idea of STLFLIX came to life. And Kazazi, at its peak, it had reached 72 printers in Brazil and then 36 in the US. So there was a lot of people, a lot of printers working simultaneously, and that was something that I was really proud of. I would love to walk between the printers at the factory that we had and look at all those printers working. We kind of created a cool setup where you would turn on the printers, they would all start automatically using Octoprint, which was really cool. It was really nice to watch. I was really proud to see it happening, to visualize that happening. We had the loans that we did to purchase the machines that we had to pay, and we couldn't make those anymore. So we decided that it was time for us to gather what we had, sell the brand because the brand had a lot of value. We had a good recognition in terms of brand. The products were good. So we sold the brand to someone else that had a 3D printing farm. And then at the time, I was really good friends with Lincoln because he also had an e-commerce. He was manufacturing the products. He was also suffering from people copying his products. And then I said, hey man, I have this idea. I think what we could do is instead of doing an e-commerce and selling products, we could do a platform where we would make the models available for everybody to explore.
And I said, well, that's a horrible idea because these people that were copying him were paying 3D modelers to copy his models all the time. So he said, well, I could create a subscription that I would provide people the models legally and even the photos and everything. So these people are copying you. They don't respect any copyright. And do you think they will respect you when you create a subscription?